Welcome to Brawny Conversations. I am Patrick Braun, your host. This podcast will provide our listeners with informative and entertaining discussions held with experienced people covering a wide range of topics. If you want to shorten your learning curve or just learn more about one of our topics, this is the podcast for you. Enjoy our discussion. Welcome back to episode 2 with our guest, Steffen Brox. In this episode, Steffen is going to dive into the many fabulous places that he and his wife have lived, as well as the animals that have lived there with them, plus so much more. Well, so as we segue into this next section,
Sure.
I've got to ask, and I've always been fascinated with the West. I had the opportunity to spend some years growing up in California, and obviously I live in Texas now and have lived here for, a long time, since 1986. So I have just this affinity for the Western U.S. And originally before that, I grew up in New York State, so understand the East Coast very well. But so many people have very little exposure to true Western living. Our taste of it is now watching Yellowstone on TV. How did you decide to live in Wyoming as one of your 3 residences, and what's it like living there?
Well, I just got lost along the way. No, actually, it's a little bit, it's the road less traveled. It's funny. So there is an Iron Man component to this too, which is funny because I know we haven't delved into that. But Iron Man Boulder, which is not currently on the race calendar anymore. I think Iron Man's canceled it. Hopefully it'll come back. I've done that race a number of times when it was in existence. And
I think there's a 70.3 there now. There's a 70.3 now, not a full.
Exactly. And I think the full there, I'd done, I think like 4 times maybe or so. I'd have to go back and look. I ended up actually qualifying for Kona there a couple times and did reasonably well. But, what would happen is we'd leave Portland, get in the RV with the dogs, and then drive down to Boulder to race. And the funny thing was, it was always like, hey, we're going to get to Boulder, and then we would hang out there. We'd, stay for a week or 2, do the race and see sights and stuff. And on the way back, we're always, you're going down on, I believe it's, I-80, Interstate 80, going through Cheyenne and then or Laramie, Cheyenne, and then up through into Utah, and then back up through Idaho to Portland. And anyway, we'd pass the sign there to Yellowstone and Tetons and go, we should do that one of these days. And I'd go, yeah, and Mary'd say we should, and then we'd just drive by the exit and go, well, maybe next time. Anyhow, one of the it wasn't the last time that Ironman Boulder ran, but we actually ended up driving up. We made that right turn, and we said, you know what? We don't need to be back for anything for another week. And we actually drove up in the RV with the dogs and went up into Jackson town at Jackson Hole, which is actually the valley there. Actually, we did drive through Alpine. Yeah, it's just super awesome. And then spent time in Yellowstone. You do the Old Faithful, the geyser, and then we were in Tetons National Park and just
see all the bison.
You see all the bison, exactly, and all the tourists too. Actually, just as a side note, Yellowstone is really cool, but it's incredibly bizarre too because it's a remote corner of Wyoming in the northwestern part of the state. For folks that don't know where that is. But anyhow, by
the way, for our listeners, just to be clear, we're talking about Yellowstone National Park. The television show Yellowstone, actually is in Montana. And Yellowstone National Park is in Wyoming.
Yes. Yep. And actually, I will have to profess ignorance. I have not seen the show, but I'll have to put that on my list.
It's actually, I will tell you, just as a side note, it's outstanding. Yeah. And there have been several spin-offs, which are equally outstanding. So highly recommend them but there's so many seasons, it takes a while.
Yeah, no, I'll have to do that. But I was just going to say, just bizarre from the perspective of just it's literally you have a melting pot of all the cultures of the world are there in this northwestern remote location in Wyoming. So just. But with that said, but it's just an absolutely stunning place. It's beautiful. There's actually an underground volcano there. So I think what they say it could explode at any time too. But anyhow, we just fell in love with the area, and then what ended up happening was during the pandemic, my wife was actually over in Kona at our place, and I was in Portland, and just there are a lot. Portland's been in the news for a lot of things, and I don't want to rehash a lot of that, but we were just looking at each other and via Skype and said, "Gosh, we're pretty positive people, and we're just kind of grumbling here about Portland. We need to figure something out." And so we just said, we're solution oriented. So I got Capone, our 10-year-old Jack Russell, best dog ever. Unfortunately, he passed away, about a year or so ago. But he and I got in the van and said, you know what? Why don't I go out to Wyoming and look for a place to live? Just have a place that we can maybe open another chat. Yeah, just open up another chapter in our life. And, I don't know, maybe this speaks a little bit to the trust that Mary put in me. But I went out to Wyoming and I'd found a real estate agent. Kind of funny, I actually called a bunch of different people. And finally, this gal, Rebecca, calls me back, and she's like, well, why'd you choose me? I'm like, you're the only person that called me. And, it's one of those things that the reason I mention it is it's just like being in Kona. One of the things in Wyoming, there in that area, it's kind of a resortish area. So everyone is they're either skiing or like in Hawaii, surfing, and it's hard to get people to do work. But with that said, right. I ended up, just showing up and spent about 2 weeks there, me and Capone, and Rebecca ended up showing me all around. We went through Jackson, up through Wilson, Alpine, which is actually where we ended up settling on, which is about 35 miles southwest down the canyon, and Hoback. We just looked at a whole bunch of different stuff. And anyway, found a place, got my Mary on Skype, and 30 minutes later, we were writing a contract. She's like, yep, if you like it, we'll do it. And that's, from a trust perspective, I was like, oh my God, there's so many ways this can go wrong. We're going to buy a house after a 30-minute Skype conversation. And, but fast forward, one of the things, Wyoming is not all, it's an absolutely fabulous place where we are. I absolutely love it. I probably like it better than Hawaii, but I would also say the winter. Wow,
that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot, Steffen.
Yeah, but the winters are cold. What's that?
Yeah, Hawaii's pretty good. So that's
Hawaii's
saying
good.
A lot. And by the way, saying the Wyoming winters are pretty cold is an understatement.
Yeah, but we can talk a little bit about that. It's, we haven't quite experienced it fully, though, this year, or actually I should say winter came early this past November. And so whereas the year before when we were there, November, we actually had temperatures in the 60s and it was absolutely awesome. November here just a few months ago was in the 20s and lots of snow, but still absolutely, fabulous. So, but anyway,
I love the state.
No, absolutely awesome. And, and so the story actually has a great, it's not an ending because we're all about, having all these beginnings. But when I didn't want to, and the reason I mentioned the winter was after buying this or getting this place under contract in August of 2020, I didn't really have a lot of interest in moving there in the winter and being cold. And we were like, well, we're going to Hawaii. And so the folks, they had actually only been there. I think the house was 2 years old. Just really nice. A lot of reclaimed lumber. For as far as for the flooring and reclaimed barn wood that for the siding and stuff like that. So super duper nice. I really like it. It's very charming. But anyway, still no interest in being there right through the winter. So we were able to extend the close to the following April because they needed to be in the house for 2 years for capital gains purposes. And so I said, sure, we'll just write the contract. You guys stay there till April and we'll figure it out. But the best part of the story is when we showed up in April, I knew what I was getting into, but here we are, me, Mary, and the dogs. And Mary's like, I really like this. And, this could have so easily gone the way of, Steffen, you're a moron. What have we done? And we, and I think actually if you ended up asking Mary about it, she may even like it better there than in Hawaii also. Just having the small town living. I mean, it's a very, Alpine itself is very unique. I mean, there are a lot of small towns in Wyoming and that there are a lot of them that are really, they're very charming and nice. But again, it's pretty rural and, we've got about 1,200 people. But one of the things that's very interesting about Alpine is that it is we're reasonably close to Jackson and Jackson, there's a lot of things that are just really just not affordable. Even the places
it's a great place to visit.
Exactly. I mean, we were
to visit.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were, literally in August of 2020 for about $900,000, you'd buy a 3-bedroom, 1-bath pre-manufactured house if you wanted to have a freestanding built house that was not a condo. And so just affordability is a problem. But anyway, what's unique about Alpine is we actually have a fly-in air park community. And so you actually have people that have the economic means to live in Jackson, but they literally will commute by jet around the country during the week, going to whatever their business endeavors are, flying back and forth. And so it's very unique for a 1,200 person town.
Yes, that is very cool. All right, now we gotta spin it now in the other direction because you've been a resident or you've owned property in Kona, Hawaii for a long time. How'd that come to be, and how often are you able to spend time out there?
No, that's a great question. So we first came to Hawaii. Actually, I got my first time I ever qualified for Ironman Hawaii was 1997, and actually rented a condo there, and we ended up actually buying a condo in 2007, and then we had always wanted to have a house. And so we end up kind of going back and forth and, doing the usual thing where you're renting your place out, doing vacation rent, and then, coming whenever you can. But, not a whole bunch. It was probably maybe a month out of the year. Okay. But we were able to finally get a house in December. Bought a house in December of 2009, kind of as the market wasn't doing real well. And again, me being the spreadsheet engineer guy, we had a buyer's agent we were working with, and he literally said, "You're going to insult these people with this offer." And I said, "This is all I think it's worth." And anyway, we're on the water at like $324 a square foot, but I would also
oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a good deal, but I would also, it's not all roses though. I mean, literally everything along the ocean disintegrates. This is where it's funny. I just had a buddy of mine staying with us there. Another buddy who was on, we were Swift riding last night, and he was helping Mary with some work there. I think he ended up putting a new garbage disposal in because the other one had rotted out. Literally everything on that house. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge. You start at one end and you do maintenance work to the other end. And when you're done at that end, you got to start it all over again. Everything corrodes.
Wow. Well, the air is probably literally salt water.
It's literally salt water. And, it's not a complaint, but it's definitely, I kind of chuckle because if you would have said, hey, what do you think about maintenance on the ocean? I'd go, not a big deal. It is. It's huge.
Here's the great news, though, is they're not making any more land in Hawaii or anywhere else for that matter.
Nope.
So the longer you hold it, just keep maintaining it so it's there to sell someday.
Exactly. But I don't even know. I don't know. I was talking to my buddy last night about it. I just really, as much as, I love Alpine. When I'm in Kona, I probably go, gosh, I like Kona better, but I do actually like it better. And I think a little better in Wyoming. We can talk about that a little bit. No, Kona is just a really special place. And, and obviously there are a lot of really cool tropical places in the world that you can go to. But just for us, what drew us to the island was because of Ironman. But it's been a really special thing, I think, for Mary and I. Probably the biggest thing was, probably in 2010, about a year after we bought the house, and everybody wants a house in Hawaii, I think, and so we were fortunate enough to be able to do that. But literally a year later, when it's like Christmas, it's the day after Christmas, you've unwrapped your presents, and you go, well, now I'm in Hawaii. What do I do now? We just said we like it here. And again, we've been really fortunate. And I know you'd asked, how often do we get to stay there? And we've been doing a lot of back and forth, over the years. But last year we said, hey, we're going to spend 4 months here. And we flew in December and stayed till the beginning of April. And we had an absolutely fabulous time. It was just really nice. We're in a little neighborhood there. We've got great neighbors. Certainly there's some vacation rental, things.
Sure.
That's happening all over the country where you got, every once in a while you get bad actors, and that's just the way it goes. But we've just got really nice neighbors that, folks that live there. We got, our friends Mark and Katie from Philadelphia that come in. Bob and Mary from Spokane, who are next door. And, what's really funny is, so my buddy Steve, who one of my Ironman training guys, he's raced Kona 3 or 4 times. He and his wife stayed there, and I was going to join him, but I couldn't because I had to be here with Maui, getting him ready to go over there. But
that's a new dog. That's a new
our
dog,
new dog.
Yeah.
Exactly that. But it's so funny. My buddy Steve and Melanie there, they are basically, they're friends with all our neighbors. And so it's just a really nice community there. And just having the folks there that, they're from, all over the U.S. We're super duper fortunate. Same in Wyoming, just great neighbors too.
Nice place to be able to go. That's awesome. Before we get off of the topic of the locations, Oregon, Wyoming, and Hawaii, any I guess favorite activities that you'd recommend? Maybe 1 or 2 activities in each location that you'd recommend for anybody that is thinking about going to visit those locations.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. First of all, the number one thing if you're in Wyoming there and in the Jackson Alpine area is go to Yellowstone, go to the Tetons. They're just absolutely wonderful national parks. If you're in the Tetons, I would check out Jenny Lake there on the west side. There's a boat ride you can take over to go to Inspiration Point, which is a little hike. There's a little bit of elevation gain, but it's pretty nice. If you're a little more adventuresome, you can actually skip the boat ride and just do a little, I think it's like maybe a couple mile hike or so over to Inspiration Point. I just being the triathlete geek, I brought some neoprene shorts with me. So when I was over there at Inspiration Point, I ended up actually going for a swim because we had some time before the boat was coming back. So you could actually swim in the lake too, if you're so inclined. Yeah. So, and then obviously going into Jackson, the town is just really cool. If you're there, come wintertime, it's nice. You can do the little, do the sleigh rides and stuff. But, depending on the time of year, they've got the elk migration. Up north of the town is the elk refuge. Which is absolutely, it's just fun watching that. And then just obviously Yellowstone for the sake of doing the glacier basins. It's funny on my YouTube thing. I actually have a whole thing on some of the different geysers there in the park, which is kind of cool.
Steffen, you're hitting on all the great spots, and I've been to Wyoming now a few times. I have a brother that lives there in Jackson Hole.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
But the every time I've been to Wyoming, I want to make sure our listeners understand that the Tetons are very unique in their structure from other North American mountains, whether you're East Coast or West Coast. And, as an example, in the Rocky Mountains, there's the range that builds, right? And once you drive through some passes, and then you get into the big mountains as you get back into the Rockies. Well, the Tetons, literally, you'll be driving along in Jackson, which is really flat, and you go across the river and you see these mountains, and they're literally jutting straight up, 3,000-4,000 feet from the flat land. They literally just go, straight vertical. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I've never seen anywhere else in North America like this. Do you agree with that?
Oh, no, absolutely.
How would you add to it?
No, that's true. I mean, Jackson is, roughly a little over 6,000 feet. And I think the Tetons top out at, they're under 14, I think like 13 some. So you're probably actually like closer to like 7,000 foot of mountain up, in front of you. So, absolutely stunning. I did have a chance, in September. I ended up going up, our local peak there in Alpine, Ferry Peak, ended up going Alpine's at about 5,400 feet and Ferry Peak's up at about 9,700 feet. And that was my last training run to get ready for Ironman Hawaii. And just, from there, you have a really nice view of the Tetons. But,
it's amazing. And they just like go vertically straight out of the ground. It's, there's no run up. It just is the mountains. Boom. Right. I love it. No,
Patrick, I concur. They're absolutely stunning, and even it's fun. I mean, whenever if you are fortunate enough to fly into the Jackson Hole Airport, just making sure you can't necessarily figure out which approach they're going to use. Typically, they fly you in from the north end. Is basically just get a window seat on the right side of the airplane so you can see them coming in. It's just so cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Okay, so then so those are the favorites in Wyoming. Spinning over to I guess let's go to Oregon next.
Yeah, well, actually, I got to do one other plug for Wyoming. Just if you're kind of an engineer or an aviation geek, is Aviat Aircraft down in Afton, which is just south of us there in Alpine. And it's just what's really funny is we've got this little valley that's pretty rural. But Afton, there's actually Aviat Aviation Company. They bought the rights to the Super Cub airplane. And so they build these tail draggers called Huskies. And they're basically bush planes, big tires. You can land them wherever. Super cool. But if you call ahead, you can actually get a tour of the factory. And so if you're an aviation buff or like just an engineering nerd like me, highly recommend that.
Oh, that's cool.
But but anyway, Portland. The nice thing about Portland is you're reasonably close to the coast as well as to Mount Hood, so you can ski in one day and go surfing, later on in the afternoon if you want. But no, if you're in Portland, definitely check out the Wildwood Trail. We got a 26-mile trail. It's I believe it's the largest park inside a city. You might have to fact check me on that, but it's a pretty daggone big park. And just a lot of cool, we've got the Columbia River and the Willamette River. So if you want to go boating or sailing, a lot of good stuff there. The Oregon coast is, it's not like it would be in Hawaii where you've got warm water and whatnot, but from a beauty perspective, it's just absolutely stunning. And if you get to one of the little towns, Cannon Beach or so, they all have seaside. They all have like their own unique personalities. It's just a great spot just to get if you're there, get to get a Danish and a coffee or something if you're driving through, and just take Route 101 up and down the coast.
Very good, very good. And then our last trip to Kona. What would you recommend there as a top couple of activities beyond just going to the beach and enjoying the amazing views? Yeah,
no, absolutely. Well, I got to step back on the beach part, because one of the things that Kona is not, or the Big Island doesn't have a lot of, actually, there's not a lot of sandy beaches. There are certainly some very nice. They're very nice beaches, but typically if you're going to like Oahu or so, you've got the big.
So I've been to Hawaiian Islands twice, but both times were to Kauai.
Yes. So and what's funny? Actually, Kauai is the one island that I have not been on.
It is the beach island. I think there are some of the most pristine, amazing beaches there. And so I was assuming that on Kona there would be beaches as well.
Oh, we do have beaches, but they're not. They're all very they're smaller. Where there's just what we have is a lot of lava, and so certainly if you go north of Kona, you got like Hapuna. You got A-Bay up there in the Waikoloa area. But and certainly, in Kona, you got a couple of, some cool beaches. But I was going to say there's, the big, what I would say is if you come here, reasonably soon, we've got this, Mauna Loa eruption going on. You can actually see that. And then it looks like Kilauea. Actually, I was talking to my wife. That's erupting again as well. I was going to say, if you're into the sports side of stuff, just open water swimming in Kailua Bay. I think that Kailua Bay is just one of the best places in the world to swim, just because it's reasonably protected. There's usually people out there, so you can go, and you've got a reasonably good chance of seeing some dolphin while you're swimming, maybe a turtle, maybe even a shark.
I'll pass on
just kind of, but no. But I would also say there's just a lot of the little towns on the Big Island are really cool. If you just drive around, if you're heading kind of towards the Hilo side to the south, like Pahala, you hit up the Pahala Bakery. It's kind of nice. If you go north, actually one of my favorite places is the bike turnaround for the Ironman course, Hawaii, spelled Hawi. In the Hawaiian language, W is like a V sound. But it's a little town, and it's basically this agrarian meets tropical area. And even though our place is in Kona, which makes it easier. You have shopping and get to the airport and stuff like that. If I just wanted to be left alone, I would live in Hawaii, because it's just grass, a lot of grassland, and you can, and then you go down to the Pacific Ocean, and just, that smell of salt air and cut grass, you can't beat that.
It sounds beautiful. It really does.
But I would also say, and just, you can go up to Waimea if you want a little more elevation. It's a little cooler, and definitely, check out Big Island Brew House there.
It sounds very peaceful to me, and as a lot of our listeners, this podcast. Let's see, it's middle of January right now. We're doing this recording. This will be posted in February, where half of the U.S. will be blanketed under snow, so they'll be listening to this going, "Oh, that sounds heavenly."
Yeah, no, absolutely. But no, the Big Island is absolutely it's a wonderful place. But I think, like I said, it's special for us because we've got a just great neighbors and having, one of our goals with having the house there has always been kind of it's an Ohana thing, just for having family, friends stay with us. That's kind of the most treasured thing.
Beautiful. Okay, well, I'm going to segue now because when I first was introduced to you, I knew you as Sputnik Man. And
Yes.
That led me to do a little research and an initial conversation with you to figure out where that came from. And it really ties back to you and Mary's love for Jack Russells, the Terriers. So
Yes.
give our listeners a little story about, you've got a track record for adopting Jack Russell Terriers. And tell us a little about Sputnik Man.
Sputnik Man is he was a little 8 to 12-year-old Jack Russell Terrier puppy, and my wife ended up adopting him. Well, actually, we adopted him from the Humane Society in Portland, and this was literally, she was still working full time, and she had a friend of hers, Debbie actually said, Mary, because she knew we were looking for a dog, and at this point we didn't really know necessarily that as far as Jack Russells. I mean, we knew the breed and whatnot, but she said there's this little Jack Russell puppy down at the Humane Society, and you need to go down and get him. And so Mary and Debbie went down there and adopted him, and he was just the coolest, cutest little guy. He had a nip out of one ear. I think he was the run of the litter, but he ended up being such a good dog, and just just how smart he was, and literally that Jack Russell small dog with a big dog personality that we fell in love with. That kind of started the whole journey. We ended up, when we had adopted him, we weren't living in the house that we were here in Portland now, and because now we're actually more up on the hill here in Portland and at the end of a dead end street. But what ended up happening was we'd adopted Sputnik, and when we moved houses, and we were still working at our offices, so we were commuting into work and doing everything, and he was alone during the day. Just found out he was just kind of lonely and bored, and we ended up getting him a mate. Her name was Jinx, which is actually named after she's a Bond girl, so she was a little smooth coat Jack Russell, cute as a button.
Great name.
Yeah, and so anyway, so that's it's, if you like, my wife's email is a combination of the names and stuff, but anyhow, that kind of started us down that Jack Russell path. The interesting thing was we had then realized, as probably a lot of the listeners maybe know, the Jack Russells it's that dog on Frasier or that was on Frasier. So, and what ends up happening is that a lot of folks adopt these dogs because they're so smart, and they are so smart that what you find is if you're not fully engaging them, they end up they'll eat your furniture and everything else, and they'll engage in all sorts of behavior that they think is absolutely wonderful, and you will be absolutely mortified. And so what you find is the shelters have a lot, I mean, depending on the timing, but there's just a lot of these, the Jack Russells, they end up getting adopted and then as puppies, and then a year and a half, 2 years into it, they're returned, unfortunately, just because people can't handle them. And they're, even I remember having Jinx at Home Depot one time, and a gal and her daughter come up to me and go, "That's just the cutest dog." And I said, I just ran this dog 15 miles. She's very well behaved, and she's a little tired, and so that's why you see her just walking around. But if she had not run 15 miles, she would be chewing up the gear shift lever in the car. And so you got to keep these guys busy and engaged. And so we kind of developed a little bit of a kind of a know-how of the breed. But one of the things that we have done now, there's a lot of folks that want to adopt 2, 3, 4-year-old dogs. So we've actually kind of made it our mission. And I think, as we, just from a life perspective, we're going to try to figure out we can do more. We certainly talk about that here in a bit. We adopt the older dogs just because those are the ones, as far as the Jack Russells go, we've had 2 of ours that have lived to 19. And so literally when you see a 9 or 10 or 11-year-old dog that's in a shelter, a Jack Russell, and someone, they say, hey, that's a senior dog. And certainly they have different needs, but they have so much life to live and so much to give to you. And they're absolutely wonderful. And so now we basically that's our mission, is to adopt the older ones. The downside is they pass away, sometimes sooner than you'd like. It's really hard, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's very commendable. That's, they need a home. So that's,
and from a business perspective, we've been able to do that. Actually, just as a side note, just Jinx, I remember, I brought her to the office one time, and I had an architect that came in, and he had his typical architect black turtleneck, black slacks, whatnot. And first, it was a project kickoff meeting. Had him in my conference room, and here comes Jinx, jumps up on his lap, shakes, and he's covered in white hair. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired here. I haven't even kicked this project off. I'm going to get fired. And he turns to me and he says, I love dogs. I love Jack Russells. And it actually worked out really well. And so, so anyway, I know you didn't ask.
That's awesome.
But just how that's one of the things we've been able to do, is always bring the dogs to work and whatnot. And frankly, if I have a client that doesn't like dogs, I just don't want to work with them, because I think that inherently, I don't know, that we all have our biases.
Sure.
But if my dogs don't like someone, then there's probably something going on.
I love it. Well, how many dogs do you have in your family at the moment?
So right now we have 3. We have Bella. She's our Jack Russell mix. She's from the Kona Humane Society. It's actually a kill shelter. She was actually scheduled for euthanasia. She was just like 2 or 3, and we adopted her. And then we've got Domino, who's actually another Bond girl, but named Domino. Anyhow, she's from the Multnomah County shelter, and she's 14 or so now. And then we have Maui here, who actually came with that name. We're not going to name dogs with Hawaiian themes. He actually came with that name, and he's a little bit of a change for us. He is a border collie lab mix, and there's a whole other story there.
You could be in trouble with that one. That's a lot of energy and a lot of smarts.
A lot of energy, a lot of smarts, and we were coming back here just a couple of months ago from Alpine, and we were doing a transport to bring him to Portland, and he was actually going to go to a foster home. And in 72 hours that I spent with him, I fell absolutely in love with him, and he did everything he wasn't supposed to do as far as snuggling up next to me. I just come down off Ironman, Arizona, and was just going to go for an easy 12-mile flat run here in Portland. And I was like, hey, I'll turn around whenever Maui wants to turn around. And he ran the whole 12 miles with me. And we're coming off now 4 weeks of 30 to 32 miles a week of running, and long runs every week of 12 to 14 miles. And we're still doing like 3 ball sessions a day too.
Wow. That is fantastic. I love it. And running on leash, off leash, how do you do that?
It's a good question. So one of the things that actually was really cool, within probably 24 hours of having him, we did have him off leash just in areas that we knew. But I still run with him on leash, just because, what we found, Patrick, just adopting dogs, you never know kind of what their trigger points are, especially if they're rescues. If it just turns out that, they don't like men in red shirts. And if they see them, that they go from being a very great dog to being, slightly less behaved. And so I'm running with him on leash.
Very smart.
Just until we kind of figure out exactly what the trigger points are. I have done, experimented a little bit with him off leash, and he heals really well. We like to call him a Velcro dog. He always wants to be right there with you, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Still running on leash. He wants to visit a lot with other dogs, but the good thing is, like, when I'm on our longer runs, we're going in areas in Portland that probably a little more industrial right now. And so it's just literally tank farms and trucks. So there's not a lot of other external stimuli. But we're looking forward to having him in Kona. I actually just dug up his ad. He came out of a kill shelter in southeastern Utah or southeast of Salt Lake City, I should say. And so he was actually scheduled for euthanasia. And so the fact that he's now with us hanging out, he is just I can't stress how fabulous a dog he is.
Well, I'm going to have a personal request.
Yes.
You. And now I'm becoming a Maui fan. So you've got this fantastic YouTube channel. It would be awesome if every so often you could put some updates up there with you and Maui running and how that's progressing. That's
we can do that.
In your short form video, I think that would be really cool.
No, I think we will do that. I think, and he'll definitely like it too. So he's reasonably photogenic. It's funny. We've been, just because I'm on Strava, and so you got to have a pic, and nobody wants a pic of me running on my 13, 14 mile runs. So I do pictures of him, and it's funny. We'll literally get to the halfway point in the run, and we'll just take a little break on the grass, and he literally will just sit there, and I shoot a picture, and then that's the picture for Strava. So definitely we can turn some of that into some short form video.
That'll be so good.
Be sure to join us for episode 3 with Steffen Brox, where we cover his life in Ironman, his training, his friends, the World Championships, and so much more. You have been listening to the Brawny Conversations podcast. Thank you for choosing to spend time with us today, and please subscribe to the podcast to receive our latest episodes and give us a follow on social media. New episodes are now in production, and we can't wait to share them with you. Pursue your passions and help others along the way. Have a great day, and thank you for listening.